Hello, everyone, and welcome to the OnlyLandFans Show. My name is Kendall Lejeune, and our guest today is John Alexander. John Alexander has been flipping real estate for over 35 years, as well as teaching individuals how to buy and sell property and notes since 1993. He has authored 10 books in the note, financing, and real estate investment industry category. He created and trademarked the inverse purchase technique and the compound deed technique, and in 2020 trademarked Land Mogul for use with his latest land flipping techniques. Author of many real estate books and a multiple book bestseller on Amazon.com. He's a featured real estate trainer seen on TV nationwide from 2005 through 2010. Over 100,000 people nationwide have purchased a John Alexander real estate course. He has written and sold several note discounting and real estate solution software applications, and he developed advanced methods of note purchasing in the mid-1990s, which allowed brokers taught by him to change the U.S. market in the purchase of notes and allowed the legal defense for wholesale flips using the concept of equitable ownership in 1999. He created the inverse purchase method of flipping real estate, which introduced the novation method to the residential marketplace. Some of the top real estate investors started their investing career with his various training or investment techniques. He's a certified business consultant and business valuator, and he's also a licensed mortgage broker in the state of Texas from 2001 through 2008. So please, everyone, welcome John Alexander. John, thank you so much for joining us this evening. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your Zoom call tonight. I really look forward to it. So I'm here. I'm ready to go, and be glad to answer any questions that come up as well during the segment tonight. And then really whatever you want to talk about, I'm open to talk about. I'm an open book, and I'll be glad to share whatever I can with you. I don't really hold anything back on when I do an interview like this, which is rare. So, love to do it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm so excited to interview you because, John, your course was actually the very first course that I ever purchased in land investment. And so this is a huge honor to be interviewing you. And so thank you so much for joining us tonight. As we go through the interview, if you have any questions for John, please feel free to pop them in the chat. We will have a portion at the end of the interview for you to be able to ask those questions. And then I'll also go through the chat and see if there's any questions that we missed along the way. So without further ado, let's get started. Can you talk to us a little bit, John, about how you actually got started in doing land deals?
Yeah, in fact, that was how I started out. I started out in land. And quite by accident. I went to only 2 years of college. And although I enjoyed college, I knew that if I wanted to make some real money, that was not going to be my path because I was definitely not going to be a doctor, et cetera. So I kind of focused in on the business aspect of college, and really found out, this is where I need to be. And I took off and just started doing businesses. I started honing my art of sales, how to sell stuff, which I'd already started back when I was a teenager, selling all kinds of stuff along the way. And really what happened was I kind of worked my way up into a furniture store, and I was out selling everybody. And they put me in the main store in Dallas at the mall. That was their biggest store in the U.S. And I tripled sales, and every store they put me on was triple sales, and nothing like, okay, I'm a super salesman. That wasn't it. It was the basics that nobody was doing, which was standing out in front of the store and pulling people in that were walking by, using some kind of little interest bit to get them talking. And before they know it, they were walking out with furniture. So, so they had this store that was losing money, and they said to me, what we'll do is we'll sell you this store, no money down. So I'd heard about no money downs forever. I'd read a lot of real estate books, and thought, wow, this works for business too. And so I was able to buy my a furniture store with no money down. I got into that. I worked it for 6 months, and then figured out why they were selling it to me. They were going to open up a new mall over in Killeen, and this mall was in Temple, Texas. And all my business was from Fort Hood, the military. So I knew this was going to be a disaster. So I sold the store to the owner of the store in Austin and booked with my money. So I got out just in time. Then I ran through all that money because I was single. And of course, and I was only 21 at the time. So of course that money was going fast. And my father, who was in the business since 1975, developing land and selling land, told me, you're going to lose the last of that money and you're going to start from scratch. Or you could throw $2,000 in with me. I'll partner with you and teach you the business. And I said, I just could not see myself doing real estate. I thought it was really difficult. I took a class in college and determined right there, real estate was not for me. It was too complicated. I didn't understand all the terminology and stuff. And it was just like, I didn't have time for it, kind of like, attitude. But what happened was that he said, oh, it's a real simple deal. He explained it to me. And it sounded, okay, well, that doesn't sound too hard. Tie up a property and then flip the lots. So that's kind of like the idea behind it. And so he handed me a piece of paper and he said, here's the phone number here. Call this guy. And what it was a phone number from the tax roll. So he had a contact down at the tax roll. And she would provide him the phone numbers. And my dad could not read or write anything except his own name. And he couldn't tell you what the letters were. So I figured, well, if this man was successful doing this, what could I do with it? So, these little things were kind of coming at me. So I called that number on that thing, and he was right there with me, because otherwise I don't think I would have called him. I was so scared to make that first call. And the guy basically said exactly what my dad said he would say. He said, here, make this offer. It was an owner finance offer. We'll put this much down, pay this much a month, and we're paying this much for the property. Does that sound like it's a workable deal? And the guy said, well, let me talk to my brothers and sisters. So it was an airship property. And then they came back to us a couple of days later and called me back and said, yeah, we'll take the deal. And so that was how I got into the first deal. I said, wow, that was so simple. Like one simple phone call, throw out an offer, and it was going to either be a yes or no. So that helped me get over my fear. And some of you who are brand new, if you have that fear, and a lot of you do, probably most of you will, just understand all they can do is say yes or no. So once we get past that fear of calling, you can put deals together like left and right. So from there, it took off. So yeah, I was able to buy that land, and we sold. Now this was in the middle. This is kind of like good because this was like what's happening now. So in 1982, when I did this, interest rates were like 18% interest, and inflation was out of control, worse than it is today, I think. Well, I know, because we can look back at those numbers. And I was so young and dumb, which was to my advantage. I didn't know that the economy was just wrecked, and you can't do business. So out of my inexperience, to know that, I just went with what was going on and said, my dad said, yeah. My dad never even mentioned, come to think of it, he never mentioned that the economy was bad. I don't think he ever felt it. And so anyway, we were selling lots like left and right. We could move 30 in 30 days. That's like, in the middle of a horrible recession with interest rates, homes were not moving, but land was moving like crazy. And I remember asking some people why they were buying the property instead of buying a house. And they said, well, we can't really afford the house, so we're going to buy the land, pay it off, and by then maybe the economy is better and we can put a house on it. And that's what they were doing. So that gives you some more insight into probably what this new market is going to look like for us as we go, into this recession next year. And kind of no matter what they say, we are headed into it. There's no pulling back what's been done. The printing press went crazy. and we're looking at a recession here that's really going to hit us hard. But be that as it may, land was great, never let up. And then by the 80s, I was building houses on the land. And then by the 90s, we had my first crash where I actually did feel it because of the builder. And builders do feel a crash. That's why we're losing a lot of builders. So, don't get into the land business right now thinking you're going to sell to builders. Be looking at selling to retail buyers because they will always buy. And we're not really, land is not a credit-based asset like houses are. So we don't feel the recession like houses will feel the recession. And on top of that, almost everything we do in the recession, not everything, but a lot of what you can do in the recession can be owner financing too. So you'll get more sellers open to seller financing over the next few years, where that even when you call them, it'll just be an owner finance, just like I was doing in 1982. There was nothing about any cash at all. It was just seller finance. Every call was just a seller finance offer. So after that crash, things cooled pretty quick after. It didn't really last that long, a couple of years, like most crashes, a couple of years, and things start to come back. And then by the 90s, I got into notes because when I was doing the land, I was just collecting notes like crazy. And really, I didn't have to work very much. All my 20s, I had all this note money coming in every month and kind of just, played around as a single guy. But when I turned 30, I got married. And so that put a stop to all of that. And I started having to make money again. And so I really, right there, I started buying and selling notes and kind of getting creative on, how far can we push the, the limit, which is kind of what I'm always looking for. Read the rules, find out what the game plan is, push those limits, and find a niche for yourself in there, because the niches is really where all your money's going to be. So you get into land. Once you get into land, find something else within that. I think, Brad, that's exactly what you kind of were doing. You got into land and then you realize, oh, that's not what I want, but here's my niche I want to be in. And you know it. And now you can blow it up because that's all you do 24/7. You can get creative now inside that and just keep keep growing it. So that'll be a really, amazing niche to be in, no matter what niche you choose, though. For anybody here, everybody has a different strength, your superpowers, as is said, and that's really what you should concentrate on. So after that, that's really kind of what led me into. I flowed with the market, so I'm always listening to what the market tells me, which is a good way of looking at the market. I don't try to force my stuff on the market. So by this time in the 90s, I had all kinds of techniques and all kinds of stuff, but it doesn't work. Not everything works in every market. So you've got to figure out, well, what is working right now, and concentrate on that and get good at that. And what I did find along the way, because I've really been doing this now for 40 years, about every year, small things changes within what you're doing. So you've got to be able to change to adapt to those. And then every 5 years, some major thing changes. You've got to adapt to that. And that every 5 to 7 year major change, that can be a real eye opener, because that's where a lot of people go broke. So I think probably 80% of the real estate investors right now out there doing wholesale flips and stuff, I think they'll be out of business by this time next year. Because they don't know enough yet. They don't, they've learned one method, one basic idea, and that's all they've got in their arsenal. And you've got to have more than that, or you've got to go find somebody who knows and learn from them. And so that's the best way, and that's the fastest way, of course. But it always gets out there over time anyway. So by 1999, the note business for me was practically over at that point. It was kind of coming to a close. I could feel it. The numbers always tell you what's going on with the market. So I adjusted there to flipping homes and just did that a lot. And I took what I knew from the note business and blended it into home flipping. So I was doing some owner financing connected with the flipping, and The inverse purchase technique came along at that point. I figured that out in 1999 and really capitalized off of that. So that is kind of the basic background of my house, from land to house, and now back to house. So about 10 years ago, my father, who is at 89, and he passed away. And at that point, I was just talking to him a couple of weeks before he passed away about a lot he was flipping. And he was really just flipping these infill lots. And a lot of times just going back and buying back the lots that he had sold before. People didn't want them or to get rid of them. He just flip them again. So just as a memory, I decided to drive down the street, find a lot and flip it, just to kind of relive the memory of it. And then, when I did that, I realized, wow, that was so much simpler than houses. I forgot how more simpler a land is to houses. And then I went right around the corner and picked up another lot and called, just Google skip traced them, and found the owner, called them up, asked them if they, what they wanted to, if they wanted to sell, boom, put a contract on it and flipped it. And then after that, I figured, what I really need to do multiple numbers of these, I need to figure out a way where I don't have to pay for the lot up front, because if I get like 5 to 10 lots in a month, that's a lot of money I've got to put out to wait to get closed on. And it goes against all my principles of not putting money up. So what I did is I developed a technique called a self-funding closing. And that's ultimately 8 years later, I wrote a book about that technique called How to Flip Vacant Lots. It's on Amazon. And that kind of goes through that system. And then from there, those are for smaller in lots. And then I start specializing on different methods of getting the larger lots, up to maybe 10 acres and flipping in that. And that's pretty much where I'm at right now. And what I teach people to do and what I love spending my time to do, I was doing it today. So just like you all, I've got somebody making some calls, tee me up some leads, and then I call them and close a seller, and we put the deal together. So that's basically it. I know that was pretty long, but that gives you a good idea. Oh, and in there somewhere, I was able to, they came to me and asked me if I wanted to do a TV show teaching that inverse purchase method. And that's how I was able to get on television. There was a lot of investors out there who heard what we were doing, but didn't know how to do it. So their coaches actually told the owners of the TV station, hey, or the company that does the info, hey, go find this guy so we can do this method. And they flew me out to California, gave me a deal. And that's kind of how that all happened.
That's incredible. A TV show, real estate TV show for someone that never thought they were going to be doing real estate. That's incredible. I love hearing your journey. I love hearing about the evolution that you took as an investor from going, starting in land, going into houses and saying, oh, no, never do, not doing houses anymore. Land is where it's at. I definitely get that. I actually started doing, I was wholesaling single family houses. And my business partner said, hey, let's try flipping a lot and let's just see what that's like, just as sort of an experiment. And I tried it. And within the first 2 weeks, I said, I'm never touching another house again. Land is where I want to be.
It's funny how immediately it strikes you. Oh, this is like 10 times simpler and faster too, really.
Absolutely. You mentioned something about niches and finding your niche. Can you talk a little bit more about, there may be people listening that aren't exactly sure what the difference are between some of the niches. Can you talk a little bit about some of the niches that you've come across and that other people are working in right now?
Well, okay, so there's two kind of niches, right, that you're going to hear about. The main niche out there that you hear about people training on and stuff is they'll say, oh, so within the real estate general market, your niche should be houses, or your niche should be land, or your niche should be multifamily, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one kind of niche. But the niche that I'm really referring to is like once you get into any of whatever it is that you want to get into, always be looking and drilling down deeper. So with every deal that you close, you're going to learn extra stuff. Just there's more information available to you now. You've learned something new that can be developed into a niche. Not always, okay, but you may go through 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 deals. Suddenly you see this little thing that opened up for you, and you say, "Wow, I didn't know that the school systems want to buy the land right next door to them. Just even if it's for storage or something." So now, that could be a niche where you're just looking. You're using Google Map and you're searching in and looking for vacant lots right around a school system. The same idea then can be applied to, I can look around a church. So there's a lot of churches in these old neighborhoods, these neighborhoods that typically have lots that kind of sit there. But if it's anywhere near the church, they need parking lot space. So they'll buy and pay, full price for lots like that. So that's the kind of niche that you're always looking for. And it applies to anything that you're doing. And then you can just, you add that into the mix. I mean, we never stop what we're doing. One of my philosophies I learned long ago through a horrible experience of stopping before, I developed out the next business, is wherever your main money is coming from right now, you never give that up. Even if you discover something where you can make more money, don't give up the main thing until you've made sure that second thing that you're looking at has been profitable for at least a year. So then that okay, well, that wasn't a fluke. It wasn't just, a momentary thing that happened and suddenly, so there's a lot to be said for, not pulling that trigger. And some people will tell you, jump off the mountain and I'll build a parachute on the way down. I don't like that. And although you're going to do that in deals already. So why are you going to do it where you're risking capital? You do that where you don't really have to risk capital, not your basic income, because if you go broke, that's a long way coming back. So we use that example of jumping off the cliff without a parachute only in certain areas. For sure.
That makes total sense. Yeah, that's really, really super smart and great advice. One of the things that you mentioned is that when you first started, in doing like a land deal, your very first land deal was buying on terms. It was an owner finance deal, which is a little bit different from how a lot of other people come into the land space. I know a lot of people that I've talked to get their start doing wholesaling, or they do cash deals if they're doing flipping. So can you talk a little bit about the difference between doing cash deals and owner finance deals? And if someone is used to doing cash deals, what does that, like, how can they start moving into the owner finance and that type of thing?
Hey, land fans, looking for your tribe of serious land investors? Join thousands of your fellow land lovers in the OnlyLandFans Facebook group. We're talking real deals, expert strategies, and game-changing connections you won't find anywhere else. This isn't just another real estate group. This is the community where land investors come to level up. Join us at OnlyLandFansGroup.com and join the conversation today. That's OnlyLandFansGroup.com. See you there.
Well, first of all, to move into that, a couple of things. I'll start from the idea that where this comes in at, and you're right, Kendall. Wholesalers have come into the land business and kind of I don't know. I'm going to say they always hurt the business whenever a wholesaler comes in and touches anything, because you get all these wholesalers that come in and they overquote people, and they make it harder for the rest of us, right, that actually know what we're doing. But then we can come right behind them and clean up. So, but what happens is that if somebody has a deal and they only want cash, okay, and I'm on the phone with them, I will throw out an owner finance idea to them, Okay, will you owner finance? Yes or no? It's a real quick question. And they'll say, I don't even know what you're talking about. No, I want cash. Okay, so so now I know where it's at in their head, so I can continue the conversation. We're just developing an idea about cash and going forward with the cash. And I might come back later. And I have a lot of techniques on how to do that, right? Sometimes it might be in that call, sometimes it might be in the next call, and sometimes it might be 5 or 6 weeks down the road. So I have some. And that gets more complicated. But the simple idea is that you get the easiest thing to do really is to get either a spreadsheet or a financial calculator and put the note, that you want to create in that calculator, calculate it up, and that becomes your offer. So you can throw out 2 offers at the same time. You say, let me give you, you come back to them and say, okay, look, I'd like to make you 2 offers. And you just tell me, what it is that you're after. Do you want a lower, basically it's going to be lower amount of cash, but a quick closing and in all cash, or if you're not in a hurry, which see a lot of people in land are not in a hurry. Now on homes, they are. This is why land sellers traditionally have always been open to owner finance. They want to get the most money they can off their land. So when you throw out that owner finance, throw a little interest in. I'm not a believer in these 0 interest offers. Okay. And again, that works for homes, but in the land business, it's different. So I work with a couple of different interest rates, but I'm going to throw in an interest rate so they can make more than what they would if they just sold it for cash. So that cash price will be down here. Like an offer I sent out today, I couldn't even get the guy back on the phone. So what I did is I sent him a cash offer by text. And then I took a screenshot of my owner finance offer. And at the bottom of my terms, all right, so I've got a sales price, down payment, the terms. And then I add up all of the payments that would pay out over the 15-year loan, plus the down payment. And the first offer, I don't put a down payment; it's 0 down. But I total that up. So instead of a $50,000 offer, $50,000 offer, now he's seeing like an $85,000 offer, because he's looking at that bottom number, and that will get his attention and get him to call me back. Because another problem we have, if you're texting, especially if you're texting, is getting these people to call you back. Sometimes they just either want to start the deal out on the text, or they'll drop you in the middle because they don't think it's going anywhere, and they got busy with something else. And not so much they don't want to talk to you. It's just that when you're selling land, almost everything else is important. Lunch is more important to them than getting back to you and selling this piece of property in a lot of cases. Okay, so I'm throwing out that offer, and then I have another backup offer ready to go if he comes back and says, well, I want a down payment. Well, yeah, I can give you a down payment. So what do you think I'm going to do? Anybody? If he wants me to give him a down payment with a different structure, because my first offer is 0 down. We'll get a little training in here, Kendall.
Love it. Love it. Anyone want to jump in?
I would do 2 things. Okay. What you do is I'll throw in a little bit of down payment, but then I'll reduce the interest rate and I'll reduce the price. This is the total sales price. So then he's looking at the bottom figure of, if all those payments come in, where's that money at? And believe it or not, of course, it's going to be lower. So now they're pushed in their head. Do I want to take 60,000 or do I want to take the 85,000 with no down? That's hard to turn down when you're not, again, get in the head of the land sellers, not the home sellers, because this wouldn't matter to them as much. But land sellers are looking for every penny. So, and they don't really, sometimes they don't care about how quick that money comes in. In fact, a lot of you who have already been talking to sellers, if you ask that normal question we ask a seller on that first call, do you need to sell right away? The answer is almost always no. And, what are you going to do if you don't sell it now? I don't care. I'll just keep it. See, those are not answers you hear generally, in the home business, because if they say they're lying, but land, some of these people have had it for 20 years. They're not in a rush to sell. And so they're not in a rush to, so if they can get more money and maximize their money, then it works. And then of course you have the tax angle. You can always throw that in at the last. I don't lead with that. But I throw that in, but those are just some ideas there on the owner financing. But that's a general idea of, getting creative in making offers with owner financing and getting them to the owner financing, even when they want cash. We spend a lot of time talking about that, as you know, Kendall.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just the opportunities and possibilities that buying on terms or making a terms offer opens up, it's incredible. And so if someone is used to paying cash or doing a wholesale deal, and they hear, okay, I can start offering creative financing offers, they may be thinking, well, then what do I do with it? What's the exit strategy? Once I get it under contract or once we agree to terms, what's the exit out of that when you have it on terms? Because it is a little bit different from I have a cash offer accepted, and now I'm going to turn around and sell it for a higher cash offer, and now I have my split. Can you talk a little bit about the exit strategy on a note?
So when you're looking at doing notes, you're always looking at a spread between, again, what you're buying for, even if it's on owner financing, and then what can you sell it for? So I'm looking for, obviously, a bigger down payment. So if I give the seller $0 down and I can get 10,000 down, 20,000 down, let's say a $80,000 property or so, that's cash that goes in my pocket. And then there'll be also a difference on the note. Let's say I match the note even. So let's say there's a $60,000 note now after my buyer puts a down payment, and my purchase price was $60,000. So I've got $60,000 that somebody's paying me, and I've got $60,000 that I'm paying somebody else. So if I have a 6% interest rate on this one and a 10% interest rate on this one, I'm making a spread. Automatically, I'm going to be making a profit. But oftentimes what happens is there's also a difference in that note amount. So now that note amount also can make a big difference. So the offer I made today, I might as well we'll just go live with it. That way I don't have to remember too much. Okay, so on this one, it was 55,000, $0 down, 55. So 55,000 would be also the loan amount. Obviously, 180 months, 6% interest. That's a $464 monthly payment. And if I take this, if I do the same numbers in at a 10%, I think there's almost $200 payment difference. So I'm picking up an extra $200 in cash flow, something like that. But this guy would get on this one, this is $83,550 and $83,541. And I'll give you show this to you if you can kind of zoom in. This is actually what I sent them, and that's blurry, but you get the idea.
There we go. Okay.
So, and then if he does the other one, the same thing happens. So I'm making, I'll make less of a cash flow on this one, but I'm making more of down payment. So I can pick up that, full 15,000 or whatever I'm asking for on it. And if I have to give him money, I'm giving him money out of the down payment I'm getting. So it's not costing me anything. The rest of the down payment goes into my pocket, but now I'm making more on the spread because I'm now pushing a lower offer to him. Lower offer, lower interest rate.
That's fantastic. That's really cool. That's really cool. So when you are structuring your offer, are you also thinking about your exit strategy in terms of, so like, for example, for a cash sale, if we know that the retail value that you could potentially sell this lot for is $55,000, how do you kind of reverse engineer that to know what an end buyer will pay in terms of a terms offer in order to be able to structure your initial offer with the seller?
Well, when you offer owner financing on land, first of all, there's no appraisal system inside land. Okay, so in homes, there is an appraisal system. Everybody knows what that home is probably worth, and you can get right down to within $5,000 of where it should be, whether you're selling it retail or whether you're wholesaling it. So there's not much of a science, or let's say there's more science there, less art. But in land, it's more art. So you're going to, find out what some comps are if you can find them. All right, and a lot of times we can do that online, and then we can take that as our idea of, okay, the highest price that the land is selling for, in this area in the last year has been this price. That's pretty much where I'm going to be, plus some, because remember, we're owner financing it, and that's our note, and that's our deal. So I can usually push it a little bit more. So one that I just finished flipping recently was the last sale was $52,000, and I sold this one for $58,000 with owner financing. So, and there was no negotiation. He didn't even try to negotiate it. Actually, he did only by accident. I offered it for $60,000, and he said he only had $8,000. So I wanted the numbers to work out easy. I gave him a $2,000 break. I took the $8,000 and put that in my pocket. So that's the idea behind, how you can structure the end. So basically, I work backwards on every deal. So the deals that I made offers on today, I go through a process, we're looking them up, pulling them up, finding out what they should sell for. And that tells me, and I'll just put everything in a spreadsheet, right? One side will be what I can retail it for. And then I can play with a note, a couple of adjustments, and I have my offers ready to go. And then really, I don't have to do too much more than copy and paste them, because even if I'm telling somebody on the phone, I'm going to tell them generally, what the offer would be from the standpoint of owner financing. You still need to get them something physical so they can see it. Numbers don't last in our mind. It's hard for words to last in our mind very long, much less numbers. So I'm always following up with a text of what the deal looks like.
Listen up, land fans. This is huge. We're bringing you the one and only Pace Morby, star of A&E's Triple Digit Flip and the mastermind behind $450 million in real estate deals. He's coming to our virtual meetup on Thursday, December 5th to share how he's applying his creative financing genius to land deals. Head to OLFmeetup.com to save your spot today. That's OLFmeetup.com. This is the kind of opportunity that changes everything.
Love that. That's great information. Lots of great nuggets in there. So switching gears a little bit, you talked about how you sort of had a little bit of an evolution from going from infill lots to larger acreage. Can you talk a little bit about the types of larger deals that you're doing now?
Well, I didn't have an evolution of going from and to. It's just adding to. So to me, infill lots are still great. Those that I was pricing out, these $55,000, this was an infill lot in San Antonio. So so we hit infill lots and we hit acreage from 1 to 10 acres. And but the ideas are all the same, Again, I mean, I use 3 to 4 main techniques to flip, just depending on what does the seller need to have happen and what does the buyer need to have happen. Because there's a ton of creative ways to do land deals, just a ton.
Yeah, those are really good important points about finding out exactly what the seller needs and what the buyer needs. And then it's just a matter of finding the technique to make sure that those needs are met. That's a fantastic point. You talked a little bit about changing your process and changing your approach depending upon where the market is. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing the upcoming market to be here in the year 2023? What can we expect to see? What types of adjustments will you be making in your business as it affects land?
Okay. I'll start with nobody can predict anything. I'll put that out there first. But we can pretty much go by historically what happens in crashes. And so we have to assume at this point we're in a crash. We look at the stock market and we look at real estate market. And a lot of times they go in tandem, not always though. So I've seen one crash and not the other. So I've seen the stocks crash, but not real estate. So, but those are more minor. Anything major, like what we're in right now. So we're seeing, 20, 30% decrease in the stock market. That will always affect real estate. But we have all this other stuff going on, increased interest rates and inflation. Both of those will be detrimental. So what we can do is we can look back in history and say, what happened that's similar to this crash before, and then look at what happened in that market. What was going on? What was the part you don't want to be in, and what was the part you wanted to be in? Okay, so in the 70s, all the late 70s into the early 80s, that's how long that market crash lasted. It was a long time. And that's because that crash had the added problem of inflation and higher interest rates. And most of these other crashes, we don't see that. We didn't see that in those markets. There was no inflation in 2008 that was going on. So this is going to be a bigger than normal crash. It could be a longer than normal crash. So most crashes I've seen, the real estate market pops back within 2 years. 2008 market, that took 3 years because that was a more serious crash. So you can see, even though the same things happen, there's different effects that go on in the crash. So just in your future, and this might be 20 years or 30 years or 40 years for some of you, remember what these crashes, remember what was going on in these crashes, and you can benefit by saying, oh, I remember what happened. So I can remember what happened in the 70s, because back then, all of the people who were renting out properties, they were absolutely crushed, and they stayed crushed, and it kept getting worse for them all the way into the 80s, because by 86, 87, I was still buying properties from people who were still crushed, and they had what we called back then alligators. They called homes alligators, and the alligator was because it ate more than was coming in expenses. So they were always upside down, and they were doing all kinds of crazy things, and it was a mess. Anyway, it took a long time for all of that to transpire. But so my advice right now to people is, if you're a landlord, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. I would be exiting all of my properties right now if I were a landlord. But I've learned enough over the years that almost every crash, landlords get hit first. Them and builders are the two people in real estate that get hit hard. Secondary, of course, real estate agents and mortgage brokers. They all get hit hard. The flippers, we don't really feel it. I mean, I went through 2008. I didn't feel it at all. So that's because there was no buying and holding, none, zero. And I was telling people on my own back then. I did a stream. There's one probably it's still on YouTube. I'll just put it on YouTube just for back in I think 2007. And in there I was saying, if you have anything, sell it right now. And that was a year before that. Now, I didn't know when it was going to happen, just like none of us. And you hear this though, but you as real estate investors, if you're doing deals nationwide, you can see what the numbers are. It doesn't take a scientist to come along and tell you when a crash is going to happen. Suddenly your sales go down. Suddenly buyers start to dry up. I mean, as soon as you see that, a crash is about to happen, and it can take a year after that, to really hit. But yeah, so this year, I think we're going to see much of what we saw in the 80s. We're going to see we'll see the housing market can get hit hard. However, all right, because every crash is different. The parameter that we have out there that we didn't have back in the old days is we have corporate America trying to buy up every home so they can rent it out, because they are turning us into a renter nation. There's no doubt about that. And so the crash will get prices down to whatever they can get down to. And again, I think next year we'll see our lowest prices probably by the end of the year, and maybe into the following year after that. And it may stay low for quite a while this time, not like bouncing back like it usually does. But all that time, the corporate, BlackRock and everybody else is in there, hedge funds are in there swooping up all these houses, and people can't afford to buy anymore, and they're renting. So it's going to be for them, it's a match made in heaven. But if you're a landlord, if you're an individual trying to keep up with the expenses, you can't do it. BlackRock's got unlimited money, and they've got a government right there they're working hand in hand with. They can print up all the money they need. And, so those guys get bailed out. We don't get bailed out as investors. So I'm very cautious about anybody being a landlord business or multifamily right now. Now, it doesn't apply so much to apartment complexes. So back in the 70s, they weren't really affected as much as individual homes were. So the alligators, those are all individual homes and mobile home parks. So those were the ones that really got hit bad back then. So, but the other things were not so bad. And then I would say that flipping is always going to be the safest, because you're not holding, and you can flip all the way down in the market. And that's why at some point sellers with land would welcome just any buyer to come along, because buyers will dry up. And then because right now they're getting inundated with mail, and they're getting inundated with text. So, they're getting hit every day with text. Well, that all comes to a stop at some point, and then you're the only game in town, and your only game is owner finance. So that's what starts to usher that in. So I think that will be, again, more so next year than even right now. The sellers are still thinking they can get last year's prices in land all cash. And while you can still find some buyers out there, they are drying up for cash, as far as the cash buyers. But I'm not seeing any drying up as far as the owner finance. We're doing fine if we're selling on owner financing. That's why I'm already, getting the idea out to investors. Hey, get your deal done with owner financing, and then owner financing. So basically you're creating a wrap, but it's not like a home wrap where you've got a mortgage involved. Your seller is just financing you, and then you're financing the end buyer. But that technically is a wrap. And by the way, you've got to follow all the same wrap laws that your state. I'm in Texas, so we have laws here we have to go by. Being that has to be closed at a title company, there has to be a lawyer involved there somewhere for that paperwork, and to make sure the disclosures are correctly given to the individuals.
Very, very interesting times coming for sure. When you are selling and doing disposition on these owner finance deals, how do you go about selling that? Do you just throw it in the MLS, or what's your preferred method of doing disposition?
If I'm trying to sell for cash, and it's anything above 20,000, well, first of all, I don't go there first, but the MLS is the way to, try to get a maximum cash offer out there. But there's nothing that beats a sign on a piece of property. That's like my number one thing I tell all my members. Hey, the first thing you can do, if you can get a sign on that property, you can't always get a sign on a property, because sometimes we're flipping. I flip all over Texas, and I never put a sign on any of those properties. But if it's within, a 30-minute drive from me, and I do plenty of those, I'll drive by there and put the sign up, and try to, and I'm always looking for other, opportunities, because when you drive into an area, suddenly you see things that you can't see on Google, or your list is not going to give you. That can be an opportunity. If you're driving for dollars, and no matter where you live in any state, one of the great ways of finding properties is just to drive around. Go outside the city primarily and drive into some country subdivisions, and drive in there and look for just an overgrown lot, that's just all weeded up and vines and all whatever. Just, it's the one that stands out. You can't miss it. And then grab that lot information. And if you have like Landglide, for example, you can get on your phone and you can just open it up and it tells you who the owner is right there, and try to do a cold call to that person. Now, if you're driving for dollars, I'm not big on mailing to them as much as just doing a cold call and trying to find out that way. And where mail fails, and it's going to fail a lot, that's why you have to mail a lot. Cold calling somebody, you're trying to really find them individually, your odds of getting the deal increases tremendously by doing that. So that's a great way of, finding just local stuff, and just start there.
That's fantastic. Super low cost as well. Just drive around.
Free to start. Yeah.
That's it. Can you talk? You mentioned cold calling just now, and that's a pretty big topic for a lot of people. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some tips and tricks for people that have never cold called before? How do you talk to sellers? What do you have any suggestions about that?
Like in my training, I give 2 scripts. I give what we call call 1 and call 2. So there's a call that you make individually, and that first call is generally a response to either a mail or a text or whatever, and that gets some initial information. Well, what you would actually do in that call 1 is the same thing you would do on a cold call with somebody. So if you're just searching for a particular property and calling them, you're going to get all the basics. The things that I like to try to get is, and it's and I've trained this even on houses when I was doing houses, and a lot of stuff that applied to houses apply here too. But one of the best lines, and you should all write this down, because you'll get so much information out of a seller if you use it. They'll just start talking, and sometimes if you keep your mouth shut, they'll just keep going. Tell me about your situation. That's it. Just, can you tell me about the situation? And then whatever goes on in their head, is their hot buttons, and they'll start talking about what's going on with this property, and what they're telling you in this conversation at this point is a lot of their hot buttons that you can use to get this property. Okay. Because you're going to find out their needs, their wants in a conversation like that, and their pain, which is the main point of that question. I'm trying to find out what is the person's pain point so that I can say it back to them in my own words, making sure I understand what their pain point is, because we don't always, somebody starts talking and we can think we know, but until you actually tell them back, say back to them what you think they said to you, because then 2 things happen. 1, they'll verify, yes, you got it, and that was all there is to it. Or 2, that'll open up another conversation of even more pain, which is what you want. The more pain they can tell you about, then you're the doctor here, and you've got the cure, the solution, and that's where you can say, okay, I can take care of that. I can fix that. I can do this. I can do that for that to take care of that. That's not a problem for us. These are things I'm always saying these kind of little things when I'm talking to somebody like that. So that's the initial thing but if you're just, cold calling, you can say, hey, I was out driving. I live down the road. What you want to do is build rapport, and that you're not like the other, cold callers that may be calling them. So if you found this by driving for dollars, we'll say, you want to appear always like a local person. And if you've ever bought anything or own anything in that area, you should say, hey, I'm your neighbor. I have a property right near you, and I was driving by. I saw this lot that was grown over, and I wanted, I'm looking for another piece of property. Would you be willing to sell this? So real simple. You don't want to sound like you're reading a script. You want to sound like a regular person. This is why I have these scripts, and I tell people in my training, read the script, understand what we're trying to say and convey and do, but then release yourself from the script and just get on the phone, ask a couple of questions. And from there, it's going to take off in the direction that you need it to take off in. And now you're looking at just connecting with that person, and every connection will be different. And yeah, interesting, because really, the only way we can help somebody is if we know what their problem is. And and if you can't help somebody with that lot, then they don't have any reason to sell it. Why, if they don't have a need to sell, then why should they sell? So there's something that would get them to say, yes, I'd like to sell it, and find out what that is.
Yeah, that's great advice. Great advice. I love that. Can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned so far in your interview, you've mentioned mail, you've mentioned texting, you mentioned cold calling. How do you go about finding finding sellers for your deals? How do you find those owners and then contact those owners?
Well, there's a lot of ways to do all these things, right? There's a lot of ways to find the buyer. We talked about earlier. We talked about MLS if under some circumstances, and a sign. Okay, but Facebook is also a great way that I teach. Somebody just texted me today, and the text said, "Hey, I used used your methods, and I sold this lot today on Facebook Marketplace and made $70,000 profit." So I like hearing that, because it tells you what are these avenues? Like, you're asking questions from the seller standpoint, but what are these? But these are important questions. Okay, how do we do that? Well, from the seller standpoint, the seller side, I have from day one used a couple of methods, right? Always one. Well, it depends. Okay, so it depends on the situation. So recently, I bought a piece of property, and a lot of times I'm going to look at next door, because it gives me an extra foot in the door if I can call up a seller and say, I own the property next door to you, or I own the property up the street from you, and I'd like to see if you'd like to sell that property. Because in their mind, they're thinking, hey, this is the person I want to talk to because they'll pay me the most. This is what every seller thinks about. And as you go about this business, you are going to have some conversations where maybe this never came up, and you bought off of some other total different way. But in that conversation, the seller's going to say, well, I tried to sell it to the neighbor, but they didn't want it. Now, you'll hear that over and over and over. So why is that? Well, but that's in their mind. Their mindset is that my best customer and easiest customer should be the next door neighbor. They're going to want it more than anybody, and they're going to pay me more than anybody. That's in their mind. So when you call them and say, hey, I live up the street, or I own the property next door to you, their mind goes to, hey, I really need to deal with this. And they'll cut out any other offers, even if they have any. But then they're saying, hey, this is my opportunity to sell this property. And so now you've got their full attention when you do that. So am I going to do a blind mailing to a person like that? No way. No way. I'm going to get on the phone and call them. I'm going to skip trace them and call them. And I can do that with the whole neighborhood, because, hey, I'm your neighbor. I'm your neighbor. I live down, I have the property down the street, John Alexander. They don't know me, and they don't know any of the other neighbors, maybe one or two. But that's how the call happens, and that's why it'll be much better. If you can't get them, and I've had I've had plenty of things where I can't get them, you just can't. Then I'm going to mail them, not a letter, but I'm going to mail them a letter on some personal stationery. So here's my John Alexander personal stationery. So this kind of thing, and you can get this off Facebook, right? I mean, not Facebook, but Amazon. And then write your note out here in cursive if you can, okay? Because a lot of times these are older people. They don't even see cursive anymore. They really appreciate cursive. So if you can cursive, and I know a lot of people can't anymore because they don't teach it, but if you can use cursive, use it. And then, so you write out the letter, sign your name, put your phone number at the bottom, and make it short. You're not selling. You're not saying, hey, I'll pay all closing costs. I'll do this and I'll do that. No, we're not selling at all in this letter. In this letter, it's, hey, I own the property next door. I'm your neighbor down the street, and I saw your lot's overgrown. I was looking to buy another piece of property and wanted to know if you were open to selling it. Here's my number. And that doesn't sound like anything that they're getting from anybody else. And this sounds like the letter they should be getting. So that's a very powerful way of picking up lots like that and actually getting somewhere. I mean, even if the price can be whatever, but they're not really selling to you now based upon price as much as they're selling to the person who they think will actually buy it, and they will want it, and they will stay in the deal, and all the other things that they have a fear with everybody else about.
That's really good. That's a great nugget. I will be ordering my personal stationery on Amazon as soon as we get off of this call. If you could go back and teach your younger self something about business, about land, what would you teach? What would you teach your younger self about your business?
Well, I would have gone back and started earlier, first of all. Even though I started out in it, I got away from it. And I just, at the time I was doing it was small profits. But you do a lot of them and it adds up. But still, you can still make more on a house back then. But today, you can make just as much flipping land as you can a house, more a lot of times. So, but as far as what advice I would give myself on land, that's hard to come up with. I would say mail more consistently. That's probably the key. And I think that's a major weakness, not only with me, but it's with everybody. And I get spoiled because I still have people calling me from letters I've mailed out years ago. So the great thing about mailing is that they get your letter over and over, and they keep them. They'll keep some. And if your letters are coming to them over and over, and Joe Blow down the street who decided to become, he got out of wholesaling yesterday and decided, I'll give this land deal a try. And they mail them once, and then they go off to a new list. They don't remail. Who are they going to call? Me? That's mailed them consistently over the years. They know I'm in business. They know I must be in business and staying, being able to buy land and do what I say I'm going to do. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in mailing them over and over. So it helps to have multiple touches on mailing. So I would say, but you got to be consistent. So all of us, it's an effort to mail out. So either you can use automated systems. They have them. So that's one way of doing it, but just having the discipline to mail more is probably what I would say. Because I should have done a lot more mailing than what I did. And I still make good money, but man, I could have made a lot more money if I'd mailed more. This is the bottom line is you're going to make as much money as you put into your marketing and promotion.
Yeah, that's huge. It's so much of it is marketing, finding.
And we're lazy. I mean, people, especially us, we get we're getting lump sums of money, 10, 20,000. You go, I'm not going to work next week. And we get into that.
Exactly right. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but John, if there's anyone that wants to reach out to you, to contact you for questions, or if they're interested in picking up one of your courses, joining your memberships, how do they contact you?
The best way is to go to join my Facebook group, the free Facebook group at Land Mogul. So it's Facebook group /groups/Land Mogul. So you can open up any groups, take everything back to the groups, and just put in Land Mogul, and you'll come to my site. It's also at my page on johnalexander.com. johnalexander.com. There's a link there as well. And then I have, I have the books there. I have some training in there. My mailer is in the Facebook group. So under the files section, you can get my main mailer. It's the one I've used for many, many years. It works, and it continues to work for everybody else. So sometimes we modify it a little bit here and there, but not too much. And then also, if I also have a mentoring. So if you want to do a more advanced stage, or you want to do a lot of, learn all my techniques, basically, then I have a mentoring, and we can jump on a call for that. And you can always reach out to me if you have a quick question or something on Facebook. I don't do marketing anymore on Facebook. I'm really semi-retired, and I do this because I love it. It keeps me active, And so I keep a small group, and I like it that way. So.
Excellent. I cannot stress how valuable John's materials and his guidance has been in my career and continues to be extremely valuable. And so I highly suggest, if you're interested, pick up one of his books, get his courses, check out his mentorship, at the very least, check out his Land Mogul group. Some great information going on there as well. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a wonderful week. As always, we will be doing more of these coming up as well. Every Thursday, 6 p.m., we'll have a new guest. Again, I want to thank John Alexander for sharing all of his valuable wisdom with us. Until then, take care, be great, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, Kendall. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much. Have a good night, everyone.
If you're interested in hearing from other 7-figure land flippers about how they've started and run their businesses, then join us at OnlyLandFans.com. Looking forward to seeing you there.